Hey YouTube, welcome to day 12 of my 14-day challenge. So this video is actually one that was not planned for the 14-day challenge, but after reading through your comments, I realized that this video is definitely necessary. So if you are brand new to print on demand or you're just not selling, hopefully this video will at least help you identify where you are weak and you can improve on those things, okay? And I know a lot of you all are very, very overwhelmed. You don't know where to start. You don't know if you need to start learning software, should you hire somebody and all that. So I'm going to address all of that in this video. So let me just try to break this down into steps, okay? Because I think a lot of you are just all over the place. And I have had people come to me and say, hey, Lisa, I want to make a living with merch by Amazon. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Do you have a design background? Have you ever sold t-shirts? No, I've just been watching YouTube videos and I see that a lot of people make money, so I want to do that. Okay, look, there's nothing wrong with setting goals. I would never, ever criticize somebody for setting a goal, but let's just be realistic here. If you have never designed a t-shirt in your life and you know nothing about the print on demand business, that's a lofty goal. So instead of focusing so much on how much money you can make, let's start smaller. How about set a goal of selling one shirt? A lot of us set goals that are way too broad and way too big for where we are right now in our lives. So you need to make a goal that's relative to where you are. So now that we've got that established, let's talk about the 4 things that have to happen if you're going to sell t-shirts. Number 1, you have to discover people that are buying shirts. It doesn't make sense to create a t-shirt for a niche that isn't buying tees, right? Second thing, you might have to narrow that down. The idea might just be too broad. I would never create a nurse t-shirt in 2019. Just target nurse t-shirt. It's way too broad. Okay, so you might have to narrow it down. And we'll talk about when you'll have to narrow that down in a second. The third thing that you have to do is you have to create a design that appeals to the audience that you're creating for. And this is where I think a lot of people get it wrong. It's not just about combining ideas. If they don't make sense for that audience, it's not going to sell. You know, just because you throw a bunch of keywords on a shirt or in your title, that's not going to make it sell if your idea doesn't appeal to that person. And that just takes practice, honestly. Some people are a little bit more talented with that. Others got to do a little bit of practice. And then the 4th thing you have to do is create the design, right? So you can either learn software yourself or you can outsource. Somebody posted about this recently on my channel. They have been spending a ton of money on outsourcing and they're not selling anything. I hear this so much. If you are spending money on outsourcing designs, but you haven't done steps 1, 2, and 3, you're wasting money. Sometimes, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but sometimes it's better to learn how to sell in a couple of different keywords. And then once you have those few keywords you're selling in, then you think about outsourcing because you already know what sells and you can tell your designer, hey, these are my designs that have sold. Can you improve upon my designs? Now you can start getting something out of outsourcing. If you're ignoring steps 1, 2, and 3, you can waste a lot of money. The other thing, learning software. A lot of you are like, oh my gosh, I got to learn Photoshop. I got to learn whatever. Sometimes the simplest designs sell if you've done steps 1, 2, and 3 well. It's not always about having a very complex, detailed design. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes that does help. But if your idea is great and you found a great keyword, you don't necessarily need this fancy design. So really spend some time focusing on where are you lacking of those 4 steps. Some of you need to go back to step 1. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. Let me share some insight into my experience with merch when I first started. I realized it was a different time. But when I applied for Merch by Amazon in early 2016, I spent those months while I was waiting for my application to be approved watching videos on Merch by Amazon on YouTube and learning about the different extensions like the DS Amazon Quick View extension so I could study what was hot. So by the time my account was approved, I already knew some of the keywords I was going to try and target. And that shirt that I sold in 48 hours, it was a shirt on a keyword that I had never sold on before, but I had been doing research prior to getting approved. So what I did, because I wasn't that skilled in Photoshop, I didn't know how to create what I was trying to create. So I went to ThinkStock. Now, I'm not recommending this because it's very, very expensive. There are other options you can use, and I'll mention that in a second. I went to ThinkStock and I bought a commercial license for an image pack for this keyword. So let's say you discover frogs are hot right now. And so I bought an image pack of a bunch of frogs in different poses. So then I took those images, I opened them up in Photoshop, tweaked them just a little bit, and then I began creating my designs for Merch by Amazon. And that was my first seller, sold in 48 hours. See, a lot of you get into Merch by Amazon and you haven't really done any research while you were waiting to get approved. So you get in and you're like, okay, what do I do now? See, I already knew the keywords I wanted to target when I got in, and that really helped me. Now, I have to mention this about buying images. How do you know someone didn't just steal that image and is reselling it? That's always going to be a risk, which is why I don't necessarily recommend this all the time, because that is a risk and you don't want to, use images that you really don't have rights to. But one thing I will say about ThinkStock, even though they are more expensive, they do extensive research on the images they allow for sale. So there's less of a chance that happens. That's why sometimes it does pay to pay a little bit more. You really have to be careful with sites like Creative Market and Etsy, because some of the cheaper sites, a lot of times people will steal images and then resell them. So there is always a risk with that. So I have to put that out there. But I'm just telling you guys, that's what I did when I started, because I wasn't that skilled in Photoshop at the time. Now you can go on Creative Market. It's much, much less expensive, and find some image packs, and you'll have to buy a commercial license in many cases, but it's way cheaper than ThinkStock photos. Just always remember, if you do that, it always comes with risk. But I'm telling you this because it's very important to understand that when I got into merch, I already knew what was hot. I spent time watching videos on YouTube, so I was ready, right? And so that helped me. Now, let's talk about finding keywords and doing some research. Now, there's several ways to do research. I tend to do research manually. I think of keywords, I type them in, and then I just go and go. Now, if you feel like that just takes too much time or you can't think of keywords, you might want to consider Merch Informer. I've never used Merch Informer, and I know that there's some controversy around Merch Informer. Some people say people use it to copy. I don't think you should use Merch Informer to just copy and redo people's designs, but it can be helpful, I think, just from what I've seen, to find keywords that are hot, because they have something in there called like a trend hunter or whatever. And so you can see what shirts are trending, and it might help you discover keywords that you never thought of. See, that's an advantage I don't have. I have to literally find these keywords myself. And I think it would help me if I had some type of tool to help me think of new keywords, because I've got the creative part down, but sometimes I do struggle on finding new keywords. So here I am in Google Trends, which I think is a great place to start. Now, I tend to use Google Trends for broad keywords, because if you use very, very specific keywords, you'll find that there's not a lot of data. So I start with just doing the broad keywords, and then I go to Amazon to see how I can narrow that down. So that's where I start. So what I did here on Google Trends is I'm looking at the demand or the trends for teacher shirt, nurse shirt, chef shirt, and llama shirt. As you can see, they're color coded. So teacher is blue, nurse is red, chef is yellow, llama is green. Now, if you're looking at this chart, you might go, wow, I'm definitely going to go for teacher shirt because it's the highest. But if you look closely, the demand for teacher shirts have really dropped off. Look at that. It's the lowest it's been in a long time. Look at the Christmas demand, Q4. Typically, you would see an increase here, but they've dropped off. So teacher shirts are cooling off. So of these, the only one that is starting to show that it might be trending upward is the llama shirt. Now, it dipped over Christmas, but look, it's increasing again, and it's on the rise slightly. So of all of these, if you're looking at trends, the llama shirt seems to have the best trend, and then maybe chef shirt. But the others, look at nurse shirt, really dropped off. So I know a lot of people always give the example of the nurse shirt and the teacher shirt, but look at the demand for them. Not only are they very competitive keywords, but the demand is dropping. Now, I don't really care about the numbers. I mean, unless the line is just flat and there's no interest at all. A lot of people will say, but look, do you care that this is higher than this one? These are all numbers relative to one another. So I'm not too worried about that because Amazon will tell me what I need to know. So let's just say you decide to do llama shirt. You're going to start there. So let's go to Amazon and see what that looks like. First thing I notice is that there are 6,000 results. That's a lot of results, but it tells me that they're selling because when you see a lot of results like that, yeah, there's some demand. And so the next thing I'm going to do is look and see, are they selling? Looks like they're selling, And once I find a keyword that looks to be selling good enough, and I don't have the perfect thing I look for, I just want to see some shirts with a lower BSR here and there, right? I don't have the ideal numbers that I look for necessarily, but do I see a handful of them in the 200, 100,000 range? And if so, this is a keyword I'm going to investigate. Now, because there are 6,000 results, obviously just doing llama shirt is too broad. So this is an example of a shirt where I would try to narrow it down or cross it with another topic. And this is when that creativity part comes in. And when you do the Punpedia stuff that I talked about in the video, this is the part that might take you some time. But at least you are now realizing that you've got a keyword you can sell in. It's just about narrowing it down. One of the sites I like to use for inspiration is Pinterest. Now, this is where people confuse inspiration with copying. Copying is like, oh, this looks popular. I'm just going to do the same shirt and change the colors or change the image slightly or whatever. That's copying. But what I try to do is take the concept and apply it to my own idea. For example, look at this Yamaste shirt. It's very clever. So why does that work? Because the person took a word that sounds like llama and they combined it with yoga and a phrase in yoga that sounds like llama. People do a lot of this, and this is when their creativity comes in. So the word llama, it also sounds like I'm a. So I'm a blah, 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 blah. And then you apply that to a specific niche or hobby or sport. So think of words that either rhyme with llama, you can use Rhyme Zone or whatever, and try to come up with phrases that incorporate llama into the phrase. And this might take some practice and it may feel weird doing it, but sometimes you might come up on something very funny. So this is what I mean by inspiration. I don't mean saying, oh, I'm going to do this, but just change the image. No, come up with your own idea where you are replacing llama with another word. And so this is how I use Pinterest to get inspiration and ideas for what's working. The other thing that helps me with Pinterest, if you notice these tags up here, these are tags that tend to show up with llama shirt. So mama, kids, girls, women. This also tells you who this keyword tends to target. So if you're going to do a llama shirt, make one for a girl, a kid, or a mom, because those seem to do best. So this also can help you figure out who you want to target. And also when you go on Amazon, look at the top selling shirts. Who are they targeted to? So that gives you insight to who is buying those types of shirts. So if you can approach print on demand like this and really focus on the areas where you're weak in those 4 steps, I think that's going to help a lot of you start, and it's going to help a lot of you who are struggling. Now, one of my subscribers left a message on one video that I wanted to call out. This is what John said. He says, at this stage of the game, I am feeling a bit overwhelmed with all the different POD sites and the different ways to sell and promote my designs. I think I need to focus on a single venture for now, and I believe that Amazon is my most logical choice. Yes, I agree. This is the other problem. I see a lot of people going all over the place, and they haven't even learned how to sell yet. Start with one place. And this is what happened with me with print on demand. I started with one site. I didn't start uploading to a lot of different places. I didn't start promoting on Pinterest and doing all these things until I had some keywords that I could sell in. I feel a lot of people try to do too much without even figuring out how to sell first. So like I said in the beginning, set a goal to sell one shirt. Set a goal that is realistic and attainable. If you've never sold a t-shirt in your life and you say, I want to make a living with merch by Amazon, or I want to make $5,000 a month with Amazon, you can do that over time. But in the short term, let's start with one shirt so you don't overwhelm yourself. And if you set smaller, more realistic goals, it just keeps you from feeling so overwhelmed in the short term. Small goals, right? Figure out where you're lacking in those 4 steps and go from there. Don't outsource designs until you figured out what keywords are selling. And some of you might even want to wait until you have a few sales under your belt. That way you know what to scale. Good luck, you guys, and I'll see you in day 13.